What's crack-a-lacking, people? Discussion time. So let's get dug in like an Alabama tick. Like the title says, please, please stop asking for better looking games. Games already look great. They've looked great for years. Instead, let's ask for better games. Now, this topic normally comes about when I'm trying to defend Nintendo from the forces of evil who want nothing but the best in terms of hardware and want to see Nintendo burn for unknown reasons. But as we all know, the hardware is only the platform from which we play games on. And guess what? It's always about the games. As I'm sure we are all aware. Well, most of us anyway. Whether you like Nintendo or not, the reason why they've been around for so long is because, for the most part, they create solid, quality software. And we all know that when it comes to their big main offerings, it's not just the quality, but the gameplay itself is world class. Period. Part of this is because Nintendo always design their games with a gameplay mechanic in mind first and foremost before they slap on the graphics, music, story, etc. etc. Graphically, their games have great presentation, and I've said it before and I'll say it again, a select art style, presentation can top any graphically intensive game. But as always, that's going to be down to each individual's opinion. But in this case, I'm right. Ho ho. Just playing. No, I'm not. I feel that Nintendo learned a long time ago that chasing a high-end graphics market would eventually lead to games coming to a standstill, or at least requiring something truly amazing in order to look drastically different, than the previous title that came before. I mean, presentation is important, of course it is. No one wants to play something that looks genuinely horrible. I think it's helped that for me, growing up through all the generations of hardware, I've grown to appreciate games for their substance, first and foremost, more than for the way they look. And I think it says a lot about the game even if that game is 30 years old, if it still plays well, then its presentation can be put aside. But naturally, as time goes on, we expect games to have a certain level of polish, technically, with a nice presentation. But even then, gameplay for me will always remain on top. We've just come out of a generation of consoles that gave us broken games, and even in this current generation, we are still getting spoon-fed the same broken trash or the same old tired formulas that simply look shinier but haven't evolved in any way or don't have a core gameplay focus that might change them up from what they previously offered. When I play games these days, it makes me mad, as it's clear that the focus on the presentation, and all the story has come first, with the gameplay built up afterwards. Now, for me, I need to be having fun when I'm playing my games, no matter what the genre is. As always, there will be a few exceptions that will put their focus elsewhere first, and they work. But there are some that have that focus, succeed with half of it maybe, and pretty much bore you to death with the other half. I feel that we are losing focus on what's important in video games. We've sat back as developers have made these graphically intensive games, shouting from the rafters, take a look at our game, people, the characters have 1 billion pixels in a single eyeball alone, but we've forgotten, or in my case, I've been screaming more for what was started years ago, back in the N64 and even before, which has now mostly been forgotten. As someone else, once said to me, graphical finesse has gotten better, but not the incidental details, which in my mind sums it up perfectly. I mean, we've come to a point where certain game mechanics are shouted as being original or amazing, as if it's the first time it's ever been done. And even if it was the first time it's ever been done, that doesn't instantly make it good. You're always going to have the exceptions, but for the most part, it doesn't instantly make it good. Then you have the recent resurgence in what is deemed as retro style gaming. These old graphics or mechanics that were great back then, but for some reason got forgotten about because, well, I know the reason. It was because of the huge emphasis pushed towards the graphics of a game. Not the details, the incidental details as I mentioned, but just the way the game looks. People have forgotten that some of those old mechanics were great, timeless even. And so, where have they gone? I feel Nintendo realized this during the GameCube era, a console that hardware-wise was stronger than the PS2, and matched the original Xbox in many ways. Had great software, but it failed to sell because of the new push in what was considered cool, or games that were for adults, whatever the hell that means. Do you remember that stupid review from IGN about Beyond Good and Evil? Actually, I don't think it was a review. I think it was a poster or something. And I remember saying, "This is Zelda for adults." What a bunch of muppets! What does that even mean? This is why we got the Nintendo Wii. Not only because Nintendo knew they couldn't compete with the powerhouses that were Microsoft and Sony on a technical front, because that was the way that the market was going now, but because they realized that consoles were losing their focus as well as games, and they wanted to remind people that the way a game looks isn't everything, and that gameplay comes first. And as I mentioned before, that's how Nintendo have always designed their games. When I see games like The Last of Us getting 10 out of 10 from most publications, hailing it as Crom's gift to mankind, then I play it myself. I wonder, I have to wonder, if I'm the one taking crazy pills here, because as a game itself, in my mind, this is not a 10 out of 10. As a gaming experience, and trust me, there is a difference. As a gaming experience, then I can understand it. But going back to my previous comments, this is only 50% of what this game has to offer you. And this is when I go on my Naughty Dog rant now. So prepare yourselves. Naughty Dog for me are overrated. On the surface, their games are graphically some of, if not the best in the industry. But underneath all that glitz and glamour, you find yourself playing an average game at its best. And this is, for me, clearly evident in their Uncharted series, and The Last of Us. I'm going to, save my Uncharted rant for another day and stick with The Last of Us for now. So get back into the shadows, Uncharted fans, and bring forward the Last of Us drones who utterly adore this game for what I feel is 50% of its content. And yeah, that's right. I'm going there. So, The Last of Us is graphically amazing. Gorgeous character models, wonderful looking environments, fantastic sound, and a story that for many, even me in parts, keeps you gripped throughout most of the game. And this is where Naughty Dog excel, and I have no issues with saying that about most of their titles, apart from Crash Bandicoot, which is trash. Again, so yeah, another rant for another day. But the gameplay in The Last of Us, I struggled with it. I really did. You have these two characters, Joel and Ellie, who are fundamental to the entire experience and are together for most of the game. Yet the designers pretty much didn't use them together in any way that could have elevated the gameplay experience. And for me, this goes back to where the developer, in my opinion, fleshed out the characters first, drafted up the story, etc., then went about the gameplay, or in my opinion, lack thereof. Why, for example, just throwing something out here, why, for example, didn't they let you control both Joel and Ellie, in this game as part of the core gameplay mechanics? Why did they just leave Ellie as a witless AI partner who drove me mad for most of the part? They even go ahead and randomly include some pointless and insanely easy puzzles into the game where Ellie has to, for example, sit on a wooden raft whilst Joel pulls her across a pool of water or something. Why couldn't the puzzle elements have been created with these two characters in mind, where you would have to control both of them individually and move them into different locations, positions in order to activate things? Then add additional elements, like time locked gates, where if you weren't fast enough controlling both characters in a particular puzzle, then the gate would close and you'd have to try again. I mean, hell, this would have been perfect in a scenario where a swarm of zombies were bearing down on you, really adding pressure to the time limit, as well as adding further horror to the in this game already wonderful atmosphere. Or make it like Resident Evil 0, where both characters have to split apart sometimes, going in opposite directions in order to meet back up again due to an obstacle blocking their way. This can easily be done by a push of a button switching between characters. You could still have those moments where you completely lose contact with the other character, something that happens in this game, and that's a great moment. Add in a few stay here and follow me commands, and hey presto, you have yourself probably an engaging gameplay element, based off what you're actually playing. What I'm trying to get across is, due to the focus on graphics and presentation, what Naughty Dog gained, I felt they also lost in gameplay, which led me to have mixed feelings on the title, as well as question if things like this should continue, which obviously I don't believe they should, but then, the industry has been going this way for years. Graphics, epic story, epic story. It's important that we don't lose focus on what makes games great in the first place. We can have these great stories, we can have these great atmospheres, characters, whatever. Let's have some great gameplay as well, and some great ideas mixed in with all these things. Now, remember, I said that The Last of Us is a fantastic experience. It truly is. Just wasn't, in my opinion, a great game. And just because I've singled out The Last of Us in this rant, doesn't mean that this doesn't apply to a raft of other popular titles, and I'll save those suckers for later. Wah. So, I can imagine that this discussion, may cause a few storms, mostly due to the game I singled out. But do you agree with me in terms of, at least making, games better in all aspects, instead of having their focus turned more towards presentation, which is seemingly the cornerstone of today's gaming world? Or do you feel games look good enough today, like I said, or do you feel like we should keep on pushing to that almost Pixar level of standard, which will cause another load of issues? I mean, hell, you might think that the gameplay in The Last of Us was amazing, and if so, please let me know, why you think this, as I am genuinely interested in your thoughts, without wanting to purposely cause a debate over, individual tastes. So, as always, thanks for listening, and I look forward to your own rants in the comment section below. Peace.